In what was perhaps the most consequential tweet sent since Election Day, President Trump gave the go-ahead for the transition. You see it there. And as unpleasant and disappointing as these past 3 weeks have been to so many of us, as much as we wish things were different, this is where things stand tonight. Now, legal challenges continue in a number of states. Serious questions about vote counting, poll watcher access are outstanding. But unless the legal situation changes in a dramatic and frankly an unlikely manner, Joe Biden will be inaugurated on January 20th. Now, to say this does not mean I don't think that this election was rife with problems and potential fraud. And to say this does not constitute being a sellout to the conservative populist movement that I've been fighting for, I don't know, 25 years. And it does not mean that I disagree at all with the president's right and obligation to pursue all legitimate legal challenges to this outcome. To say this constitutes living in reality. And if I offered you a false reality, if I told you that there was an excellent, phenomenal chance that the Supreme Court was going to step in and deliver a victory to President Trump, I'd be lying to you. Now, you've known me for a long time now, and you know me long enough to know that I will not lie to you or simply tell you what you want to hear.
The fact that a host acknowledging reality is newsworthy in and of itself is proof of how far the right has fallen. Just listen to how desperately Laura Ingraham has to qualify her statement that Joe Biden will take office as the next president. She basically has to list her entire conservative resume and reiterate her support for a bunch of debunked and baseless fraud claims, all to give herself permission to acknowledge reality. And yet, that's her and her colleagues' own doing. It was that network, among a few others, that propped up Trump's completely absurd fraud claims. And by the way, the reason that Ingraham has to issue all of these qualifications is because she knows that it's going to make her audience mad. Why? Because they believe Trump. Why? Because people like Laura Ingraham have spent years defending his every lie, his every obfuscation, his every corrupt act. It was quite literally her who taught her viewers to trust him and to believe the insane things that he said were true. Only now, when these Fox News hosts have an issue that they finally can't explain away, this notion that Trump won the election, they're realizing that no one believes them. This is Dr. Frankenstein realizing that he's created a monster, and how that monster is causing some really serious problems for them. The irony about all of this too is that even in this concession by Laura Ingraham, she still props up the baseless conspiracy theories that there were illegal votes and that watchers weren't allowed to observe the counting process. In other words, even while explaining that Trump isn't going to win, she's still giving oxygen to the very conspiracy theories that undermine her own argument. If her goal here is to convince her viewers of reality, then, I don't know, maybe don't tell your viewers in the same breath of the reason why they shouldn't believe that reality you're trying to break to them. I just think it's funny too how Laura says that Trump gave the quote, go ahead for the transition to begin, considering when you look at GSA Administrator Emily Murphy's letter ascertaining Biden's win, she writes, quote, please know that I came to my decision independently based on the law and available facts. Now, notwithstanding that the available facts she refers to is completely baseless, considering we've known for weeks that Biden's the president-elect, Murphy literally mentions that she came to her decision independently, meaning that when Trump says he gave her permission, it's nothing more than another instance of him desperately wanting to look like he's in control of the process, when in reality, he isn't in control. The American people are. And even though he's supposed to preside over a democracy, he hates the idea of the people actually having a voice. But my favorite part has to be Laura couching this entire segment in the idea that she simply can't bring herself to lie to her audience, and that's why she has to break this news. First off, the idea that Laura Ingraham doesn't lie is a lie. For the sake of not spending hours on this, here's just one example.
Although intuitively, I think it probably seemed like social distancing would be necessary, there was no real scientific basis for believing that, since it never been studied. And as one infectious disease doc told me last week, trying to stop this virus with social distancing is like trying to drive a nail through Jell-O. Viruses spread, that's what they do. They often weaken as they go, and if it's like SARS, we hope it is, it'll eventually burn out, as SARS did.
That there are no benefits to social distancing, even though in reality, the benefits of social distancing have been known since the 1918 pandemic, meaning for a century. But beyond that, the actual reason Ingraham has to break this news is because she and her colleagues were getting humiliated on a daily basis for trafficking in what has become a laughingstock around the world. Trump and his allies are at the point where they're claiming that China, Cuba, and Venezuela conspired together to deprive Trump of a second term, along with the CIA, Antifa, and the Republican Secretary of State and Governor of Georgia to collect election insurance thanks to their purchase of Dominion voting systems. That is Laura Ingraham's alternative here. She's not breaking the news of Trump's loss because she's some arbiter of truth. She's breaking the news because the web that people like Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell have woven to defend Trump is a joke. It is a circus. And every day that it continues isn't some home run for Trump and Republicans, it's an embarrassment to them. And yet still her audience won't care. Still they'll believe Trump, no matter how ridiculous the lies he tells. And many of them will turn on Laura Ingraham herself for her disloyalty to the cult that she herself helped create. So this is her reaping what she's sown. If you like this video, please check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I take a deep dive into the week's most important stories and interview major players in politics, including Kamala Harris, Katie Porter, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Eric Swalwell, Mary Trump, Al Franken, Cory Booker, and many, many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.